So does God exist? Well, let's ask Thomas Aquinas, who was a 13th century philosopher, theologian. And Thomas Aquinas lived in a day when people were starting to separate reason and revelation. They were thinking about the world in one way and then thinking about God in another way. And according to Thomas, this led to some really weird type of thinking. And Thomas Aquinas was saying, no, actually, God gave us the ability to understand the world. That's a gift from him. But also there are a number of ways that we can understand God by looking at the world around us. You know, it's kind of like this idea that you could have a visible effect from an invisible cause. Example, smoke. You see smoke, that is a visible effect from a cause, which is probably fire. So it would be reasonable if you saw smoke to say, there's probably fire out there, even though I can't see the fire. This happens when, you go to a doctor, you take your kid to the doctor with an ear infection. The doctor looks at the symptoms and says, oh, I can see these symptoms, so it's probably this issue, which he can't see, but he knows it's there. And so Thomas Aquinas is basically saying, you know what, there's a lot of stuff about the world. In fact, the Bible even says that anybody can look at the world around them and they are able to reason from that there must be something out there that made all this stuff happen. Okay. And so what Thomas Aquinas is doing, his reason for saying, yes, God exists, and the way that he goes about proving it is different than some others, because Thomas Aquinas is not really like talking to atheists. His idea isn't to convert, Dawkins or Sam Harris or something like this, because at the end of each of his proofs, he says, and this is what everybody calls God. And so he's not necessarily trying to prove the existence of God to people who don't believe in God. He's essentially trying to show people that there is a certain type of knowledge of God that we can obtain from looking at the world around us. And this has been known as the a posteriori argument, post after. So in other words, he's saying you can look at the world around us, and then if we just think about it for a second, we are going to logically conclude, or at least infer, that there must be something out there, and it would make perfect sense that this is what we call God. And so he comes up with these 5 ways. I'm going to run through these really quickly. So the first way is what he would call argument from motion. And it goes basically like this. Things move around, right? Things move. Something is moving, it had to start moving. If you have something here like a domino and it falls over, why does it do it? Well, it does it because something pushed it. Okay, well, what pushed it? Well, it was that domino. Well, what pushed that? Well, the one before. So everything is moving. And it couldn't move itself. So something had to start all of that moving. If you line up 5 dominoes, you push them, you could say, well, that one fell because of that fell because of that fell because of that. And the first one fell because someone pushed it, and that person pushed it because they wanted to have fun. They wanted to have fun because they were bored. Why were they bored? Well, they were bored because, and you can do this because all the way back to who knows how far. And so Thomas Aquinas is saying there had to be some initial thing that started this whole thing, right? And so he says there must be an unmoved mover, and this everyone understands to be God. The second way, argument from efficient causes. Everything comes from somewhere, or everything you see is an effect from some cause. And there must have been an original cause for all of this. This is similar to that first one. And he says, therefore, it is necessary to admit that a first efficient cause to which everyone gives the name of God. So, okay, you see that everything had to start somewhere. So he's saying there had to have been something that started that. This is what we're going to call God. Way number 3. Argument from possibility. Every being comes into existence at some point. That a being, like you think you came into existence on your birthday. 5 years from now, maybe somebody's going to come in existence. They don't exist now, but they will be born 5 years from now. And so there's a possibility of that person being born. And so all of these beings are interlinked together, right? And there aren't any beings that ever, that 5-year-old wasn't around, but then all of a sudden he comes around, he exists. So there must have been a time when nothing existed, right? Because, if everything comes from something else, there must have been a time before everything existed in the world. And he says, therefore, some being exists of its own necessity and does not receive its existence from another being, but rather causes them all. This all men speak of as God. Fourth way, this is called the argument from design of being. Everything that exists is placed in some sort of order from worst to best. You have Twinkies, they're kind of gross. Tacos are better than Twinkies. And so, in this big line of food, you got Twinkies and you got tacos. And then you have pizza, because pizza is better than tacos and tacos are better than Twinkies. And then you have and even better than pizza would be my wife's fried chicken, which is the best food on the earth. And so, okay, but maybe God could invent something that's better. It's hard to believe, better than my wife's fried chicken. And so anyway, everything has this from, not great to okay, to good, to better. And so if you look at this big line of quality things, like from no quality to good quality, there must be something better than everything else. Okay. Therefore, there must also be something that is to all beings the cause of their being, goodness, and every other perfection. This we call God. So we take it all the way to the most perfect of perfections. That's God. Okay. Fifth way, from design, everything has some purpose to it. And it's interesting. You look at nature and you see plants, you see like insects or something that we think probably don't have a whole lot of reasoning ability, and yet they all move towards a purpose, which, to procreate and keep their species going. And so there's a purpose that they have, but where do they get this purpose from? Like, where do they learn it? What is going on with that? And so Thomas is going to say, therefore, some intelligent being exists by whom all natural things are directed to their end, and this being we call God. Okay, so there you go. We got 5 ways that Thomas Aquinas is going to say, yes, absolutely, God exists, and we can just look at nature and we can see that he does exist. There you go.